They dropped him into the crucible expecting a corpse. What they got was Lance Kincaid, half man, half duct tape, full sarcasm. The first human in the galaxy's deadliest combat academy stood shirtless in the dismemberment simulator, chewing protein gum and mocking alien war gods with the line, "This feels like leg day." By the end of the week, half the instructors were in therapy. The other half? Missing limbs? They told him to arrive in full ceremonial armor. Lance Kincaid showed up in a scavenged exochassis missing half its plating and smelling faintly of fried rat. The drop pod he hijacked tore into the Crucible's pristine landing deck like a meteor. Smoke hissed from the undercarriage. The hatch didn't open, it fell off. Out stepped the first human to ever set foot on the most elite military academy in the galaxy, chewing a piece of protein gum and dragging a duffel bag that clanked like a junkyard in a spin cycle. "Which one of you nerds is the welcoming committee?" he asked, surveying the line of gleaming alien cadets, all standing at rigid attention. No one moved. Not even the 8-foot Clorvakian with the twin mouth tusks dared speak. The Crucible was sacred ground, meant to forge the greatest warriors in the universe. Lance looked like he'd come to demolish it. "Remove your gum," barked an instructor, scaled and cold-eyed. "You're standing on consecrated soil." Lance spat it into his hand and slapped it against the instructor's clipboard. "There. Mark my landing." The instructor blinked. Somewhere, someone wrote a note, possible mental instability. Monitor closely. The first trial began within the hour. Simulated dismemberment arena. 100 alien cadets entered a shifting labyrinth of blades, smoke, acid mist, and sensory overload. Psychological breakdown was the goal. Screams erupted as trainees collapsed, disoriented by sound cannons and razor swarms. Then came Lance. He strolled into the maze, armor hanging off one shoulder, muttering, "Smells like burned popcorn." A buzzsaw drone screeched toward his head. He ducked lazily, grabbed it midair, and slammed it into the wall. A plasma trap activated. He kicked a loose training blade into the emitter, causing it to short and spark. 10 minutes in, he was reclining on a dismembered droid's torso, carving meat from its synthetic chest and eating it with his fingers. When the instructors replayed the footage later, they couldn't agree if he was insane or brilliant. One of them said, "He treats pain like it owes him money." After extraction, while medics tended to the twitching survivors, Lance was found at the Academy Cafe stealing sugar packets and pouring them into a flask. "Fuel," he explained. "Old Earth trick." A committee of instructors met that night, projecting Lance's vitals on a holowall. Heart rate, steady. Cortisol, low. Laughter spikes during combat. "He's either broken," one muttered, "or born for this." By day 3, Lance had survived molten cavern raids, zero-gravity blade storms, and a vacuum test designed to simulate explosive decompression. He completed the latter by holding his breath and plugging the leak with his own severed boot. Shoes ruined, but hey, breathable. He began acquiring followers. Cadets whispered about his Earth-born methods, pulling live stun rounds from bot chests and throwing them back, fashioning a tripwire trap out of his own dental floss, wrestling a defense droid until it shut down from confusion. Alien trainees watched him with fear and fascination. They tried mimicking his movements, but most failed miserably. A Telnari tried his spin kick and scream combo and ended up in medical. A Draxian attempted to eat what Lance ate and couldn't digest it. Lance shrugged. Not everyone's guts battle-tested. He built a reputation quickly, faster than any cadet in Crucible history. Not because he followed rules. Because he ignored them. When asked to report for Tactical Drill 09, he hacked into the simulation schedule and switched the assignment to lunch break, Earth style. The AI complied. The cafeteria was filled with flaming hot protein slabs and a looping video of Lance bench pressing a mech arm while shouting, "We don't skip war day!" Disciplinary action was filed. It was never enforced. The commanding officers couldn't agree on the protocol for handling a human who didn't fear death and turned every life-threatening challenge into a sarcastic endurance game. On day 6, General SK Rakhth, the Academy's most feared combat instructor, issued a formal challenge. "Human," he growled before a gathered assembly of cadets. "You will face me in the ring of blades at dawn." Lance scratched his beard. "Blades? Just blades? You sure you don't want to throw in fire and a tiger for flair?" The crowd gasped. SK Raktha's mandibles twitched. At dawn they met. Lance arrived late. On a hover unicycle. Shirtless, covered in duct tape and paint. He held a garden hoe. "I thought this was a duel, not a costume party," SK Raktha snarled. Lance twirled the hoe. "Where I'm from, we fight with what we've got. This hoe took down a drone swarm in Cincinnati. I trust her." The duel was brutal, for the instructor. SK Raktha lunged with a plasma glaive. Lance ducked, smashed the haft with the hoe, flipped it, kicked him in the thorax, and yelled, "Surprise hoe!" The crowd went silent as the mantis warrior hit the dirt, wheezing. Lance leaned over him. "On Earth, we call that gardening under pressure." From that moment on, cadets began calling him General Bastard. A few called him Coach. One graffitied his silhouette on the simulator walls next to the words "Laugh first, survive later." When questioned by a nervous council observer about his intentions, Lance simply said, "I didn't come here to learn your war. I came to show you mine." Later that night, a cadet asked him, "Do all humans fight like you?" Lance grinned, eyes wild with memory. "Nope. Most of them fight better. I'm just a polite one." The Crucible's command staff issued a report to the Galactic Council. It read, "Human Subject L. Kincaid has passed all trials. Not through skill. Through refusal to acknowledge danger. Psychological resilience beyond protocol parameters. Tactics unorthodox. Morale impact on other cadets, catastrophic. Recommend reassessment of Earth's planetary classification. Immediate threat assessment pending." When Lance found the report, he doodled a mustache on SK Raktha's profile image and wrote underneath, "Immediate threat, damn right." The Crucible's instructors had seen cadets panic, break down, even collapse mid-simulation. They had never seen a recruit stroll into a live-fire orbital drop while whistling, staying alive, and arguing with his own parachute. Lance Kincaid landed hard, bounced twice, and stood up dusting himself off like nothing happened. The others hit the dirt screaming, systems sparking, limbs twitching. Lance lit a stolen smoke and stepped over a twitching tentacle. "Good morning, hell. Try not to bore me." The instructors upgraded the next trial. Heat-locked canyons, AI-controlled drones, and gravity distortion fields meant to crush resolve. Lance walked through the whole thing muttering, "We had worse in Reno during the blackout riots." The simulation ended when Lance threw his own armor core into a plasma vent and rode the explosion to the extraction point. They accused him of recklessness. He replied, "Reckless is what got me here alive." Alien cadets started watching him from the corners, like prey trying to understand a new apex predator. One asked him, carefully, "What species is Earth ranked on the Galactic Threat Index?" Lance shrugged. "Didn't know we were on the list. Pretty sure we wrote it." His combat scores were off the charts. Not because he followed rules, because he bent them until they screamed. In hand-to-hand, he choked a four-armed titan unconscious using his own belt. When the instructors yelled about regulation, he responded, "It's not my fault your handbook doesn't cover Earth-style violence." He earned the ire of General SK Raktha again when he reprogrammed a drone squad to follow dance choreography mid-combat. "You're dishonoring our traditions," SK Raktha bellowed. "Better than dying by M," Lance fired back. "Tradition never saved a single man where I'm from. Duct tape and timing did." That week, cadets started sneaking into Lance's barracks to ask questions. They didn't understand why he could smile mid-mission, or why he never flinched when weapons exploded near his head. He gave them a story. "First war I fought in, I was 15. My brother and I shared body armor. One vest, 2 targets. You stop thinking about safety when you know it doesn't exist." They were quiet for a moment, until one asked, "How did you survive?" "I didn't." Lance grinned. I adapted. That night, an instructor reviewed the surveillance logs and said to the others, "We didn't bring a human here. We imported a virus." SK Rath had enough. He demanded an official duel. No armor. No tech. Bare fists and nothing else. It would be public. Recorded. The moment humanity would finally break. Lance accepted without blinking. "You want a show, General? Bring popcorn. Or a medic." The courtyard flooded with cadets. Instructors lined the edge, confident the Deathworlder would finally fall. SK Rath towered over Lance by nearly 4 feet. His carapace gleamed. His arms flexed like loaded pistons. Lance bounced on his heels, grinning. "You ready to dance, big guy?" The first blow came fast. SK Rath drove a clawed fist toward Lance's skull. Lance dodged low, grabbed the general's ankle, and pulled hard. SK Rath stumbled. Lance launched a knee into his midsection and followed with a hammer fist across the snout. SK Rath roared, slashing, but Lance slipped under and grabbed a discarded polearm shaft, spinning it once and cracking it across the general's legs. "Still just foreplay," Lance muttered. SK Rath surged forward, grabbed Lance by the neck, and lifted him into the air. Lance didn't panic. He laughed. "You've never choked a New Yorker in traffic before, have you?" Then he headbutted SK Rath, dropped down, and swept his legs out. The general hit the ground hard. Silence. Lance stood over him, bruised and grinning. "I told you. We don't fight to win. We fight because losing's a Tuesday." SK Rath sat up slowly, blood dripping from his split mandible. "What are you?" "Human," Lance said. "But where I'm from, that doesn't mean soft. It means we're still here." Word spread fast. That the Deathworlder beat the strongest instructor using a mop handle and sarcasm. That he didn't break, he broke others. The next training exercise was a war simulation, team versus team. Lance's squad was made up of the lowest-ranked cadets, intentionally stacked against him. He didn't complain. He drew lines in the dirt, passed around scavenged wires, rigged trap zones, and made weapons out of ventilation duct scrap. "Why don't we get standard gear?" a cadet asked. Lance answered, "Because standard gear fails when reality doesn't care. We build our own luck." The battle started with drone swarms and energy blasts. Within minutes, Lance's team had already taken out a flanking unit using decoy dummies made of cafeteria trays and mop handles. He used sound loopbacks to create false retreat signals and ambushed an elite team with smoke and static. When the instructors tried to override the simulation to slow him down, he hacked the control drone and sent it spiraling into their camera rig. Oops. He took 3 hits during the final push. One in the shoulder, another in the thigh. He kept moving. Built a shock trap mid-charge using power conduits from a broken console. Took out an entire bunker with it. The opposing squad surrendered. When the scoreboards updated, instructors stared at the results in silence. 0 fatalities on Lance's side. Maximum objectives achieved. Enemy wiped out in record time. One instructor whispered, "He thinks in disaster. Like he expects everything to break and wants it to. Because everything has broken before," another said. "And he's still standing." Lance walked into the debriefing room without knocking, tossed a burnt circuit board on the table, and said, "Your simulation drone needs a new coolant relay. I patched it with gum for now. You tampered with official Crucible equipment. I saved your test. You're welcome. You've violated 16 protocols. And you've never survived a power outage while being shot at by pirates and babysitting a toddler. We all have our stories." They threatened suspension. He shrugged. "Cool. I'll go outside and build my own academy." Later, they found him in the mess hall showing 2 cadets how to craft smoke bombs from kitchen supplies. One of them asked if he was ever afraid. "All the time," Lance said. "That's what makes us good at staying alive. We just don't let fear make decisions." Someone tried to ask what Earth was really like. He paused, looked out the viewport at a planet in the distance. "It's home," he said. "And it's a nightmare. But if you can survive Earth, you can survive anything. The alarm wasn't supposed to be real. The Crucible had hundreds of drills. Cadets had seen fire simulations, reactor leaks, mock invasions. But this time the sirens didn't cycle down. This time, the instructors ran. That's what made it real. Lance was mid-lunch, halfway through a bowl of something only edible under military classification. The room shook. Lights dimmed. Systems locked down. When the announcer screamed, "Security breach! Live threat detected! Code black!" Most cadets froze. Lance sighed, dropped his spoon, and muttered, "Knew it! Never trust a menu without ingredients." The Krellborn hadn't been seen in 2 centuries. Supposedly extinct. Now they were here, in armor fused with flesh, moving through walls like shadows made of steel and rage. They weren't part of a simulation. They were a kill team. Elite. Silent. Coordinated. Sent with one purpose. Lance ran toward the chaos, not from it. As he moved, Crucible staff blocked him. "You're a trainee, return to quarters." He didn't break stride. "Then shoot me for being early." They didn't stop him again. 2 cadets lay dying behind an overturned grav pallet. Lance grabbed one, pulled her into cover, and yanked the weapon from the other's lifeless grip. "Tell me which way they came." She coughed blood. "Sector 12, communications, jamming everything." Lance nodded. "Then we jam back harder." He reached the comms corridor just as a Krellborn emerged from the wall, cloaked, serrated, eyes glowing behind fractured helm glass. The thing raised a charged lance. Lance threw a wrench through its faceplate before it finished aiming. The body dropped. The power cell didn't. He grabbed the cell, tucked it into his vest, and sprinted through smoke and static. Crucible instructors barked orders, none coherent. Automated defenses failed. Doors were locked or melting. The Krellborn were slicing through walls, not entryways. Lance muttered, "Figures. The one time I'm not carrying C4. He found an armory node, locked down by council override. Didn't matter. Lance hotwired the panel with a meal ration heater and a plasma battery. Door cracked open. He slid inside, grabbed a rail rifle, then stripped 3 training droids for spare parts. "What are you doing?" a surviving technician asked. "Building friends," Lance replied. "The kind that explode." He modified the droid cores into remote bombs, lined with pressure plates and shrapnel. Not elegant. Definitely not regulation. But Earth warfare wasn't elegant. It was effective. He moved through the lower halls, leaving traps like breadcrumbs. One exploded behind him. The scream it triggered wasn't human. Good. He reached the comms hub. A cadet was pinned, screaming under rubble. Lance lifted the beam. Bones cracked. The kid gasped. "They're here for something, not just to kill." Lance scanned the console. "They're scrubbing Crucible servers," he said aloud. "Whatever's on here, they don't want anyone seeing it." He linked the cord to his own wrist pad. "Copy first, blow it up later." Static surged. Files decrypted. It wasn't about training. Crucible wasn't built to produce warriors. It was built to identify threats before they emerged. Lance wasn't the experiment. Earth was the target. The whole curriculum was an intelligence sieve, testing recruits to profile species for potential rebellion. He leaned back. "Son of a..." Another Krellborn breached the wall. Lance dropped low, fired a single round into its leg joint, rolled as it collapsed, grabbed its blade, and shoved it under the helm. Messy. Fast. Effective. He dragged the console hard drive from the wreckage, wired it to a thermal charge, and left. It'd fry the system once he cleared the floor. As he moved out, he found a small group of cadets cornered, surrounded by 2 Krellborn with heavy cannons. Lance didn't slow. He sprinted toward them, threw a droid bomb high, yelled, "Catch!" and slid behind cover as the corridor lit up. Metal screamed. Silence followed. The cadets stared at him. "What the hell are you?" "Just a janitor," he said. "Cleaning up lies." They followed him. In the main hub, instructors were still arguing. Some claimed protocol demanded evacuation. Others wanted lockdown. Lance tossed the Krellborn's cannon into the center of the room. While you're debating, he said, they're not here for conquest. They're here to destroy Crucible's real purpose, and that means us. He uploaded the files from his wrist pad to the central projector. The room filled with holograms of mission briefings, algorithms, kill lists. Earth. Vordek. Sylvan. All species marked. High threat potential. Contain or eliminate before ascendancy. Gasps. Someone whispered. We're not trainees. We're data. Another. They've been baiting rebellions before they start. Lance pointed to the map overlay. They want to erase the next threat. I say we erase them first. SCI stepped forward. Bruised. Bloody. Quiet. You were right, he said. Lance met his eyes. Took you long enough. They joined forces. Lance fed trap coordinates to remaining cadets. SCI called in emergency units still loyal to the Academy's founding code. For the first time, Crucible stopped being a performance stage and became a battlefield. They launched a coordinated counterstrike. Lance led from the front. Charged halls while dragging wounded. Fired until barrels melted. Rigged fuel cells to collapse support struts and bury advancing enemy squads. He bled. He burned. But he didn't break. Final assault came at the reactor core. 10 Krellborn held the chamber. One of them carried a virus shard meant to erase all Crucible data before external transmission. Lance didn't wait for the go. He grabbed 2 plasma coils, wrapped them in power wire, and dove from the upper gantry, screaming. He hit the floor hard. Slammed one coil into a drone's chest, hurled the other at the console. Sparks rained. Alarm screamed. Heat roared up his spine. He stood coughing blood, one arm limp, and raised his rifle one-handed. Come on, he growled. Who's still dumb enough to think we're prey? They came. He dropped 3 before the rest broke and ran. Silence returned to Crucible. Broken. Bloodied. Still standing. SCI approached him. That was suicide. It would have been, Lance said, if I didn't plan to live out of spite. He handed him the core files. Get these off-world. Let the galaxy see what their perfect council was really training us for. SCI nodded. And you? Lance looked at the walls, scorched and cracked. Gotta finish lunch. We're always ruins good soup. The Crucible was no longer an academy. It was a crater. Every corridor looked like it had been chewed by war and spit out half-digested. Debris, bodies, and burning terminals lined the halls. Lance stepped over a sparking console and tightened the rag around his shoulder. He had 23 cadets behind him, none of them Earthborn, all looking to him like he was supposed to be a plant with legs. He didn't slow down. Command chambers ahead. If we don't take it, they wipe the core and make sure no one hears what they've done. SCI's voice buzzed in through the damaged comms. 2 more Krellborn ships descending. 17 minutes until total orbital saturation. Lance didn't flinch. 17 minutes is generous. Let's do it in 10. The group advanced, silent but wired tight. Every step felt like it would detonate something. Lance stopped outside the chamber and studied the access panel. Dead. He reached into his belt, pulled out a fork wrapped in copper wire, and jammed it into the port. You're hot-wiring a war door with cafeteria silverware? A cadet asked, stunned. No, Lance said. I'm insulting it into opening. The lock sparked, then popped with a hiss. Door opened halfway. Good enough. Inside, 2 Krellborn operatives manned the main terminal. Behind them, 3 council implants in Crucible uniforms were running deletion sequences with gloved hands and hollow eyes. Lance didn't hesitate. He fired twice. 1 council operative dropped. The other scattered. A plasma bolt tore past his ear. He rolled left, yelled, "Flank!" and ducked behind the base of a command seat. The cadets moved like they'd trained together for years, though most hadn't survived more than a week here. One lobbed a makeshift smoke bomb, another laid down suppressive fire with a scavenged repeater. Lance popped out and aimed low, catching a Krellborn in the leg joint. It screeched, turned, and took 2 more bolts to the spine from SK Raktha's squad storming in from the other side. They had the room. Lance rushed the console. "Where's the data relay?" "Destroyed," someone said. "No," Lance muttered. "Not all of it." He yanked open the auxiliary conduit panel beneath the main deck, reached into the heat-drenched guts of the terminal, and ripped out a glowing shard of data crystal. "This holds the Crucible logs. Every simulation. Every override. Every file they buried." He looked at SK Rakth. "You still got contacts off-world?" The general nodded. 3 who owe me their lives. "Good. One of them's about to owe me a damn favor." Lance turned to the cadets. "You've got 2 options. Stay here and die noble. Or help me hijack a ship and expose the Council's lie across 5 sectors." No one moved. Then one spoke. "I didn't come here to die." Another. "We were born for their war. Let's make one of our own." The team mobilized. Lance handed the crystal to SK Rakth. "Your extraction. Get this off planet. And you?" Lance strapped on a Krellborn cannon too big for anyone else to lift. "Distraction." They split. Lance moved through shattered hallways like a storm. Every time someone asked where the backup was, he said, "You're looking at it." He left destruction in his wake. Plasma mines made from coolant tanks, corridor collapses triggered by snap stabilizers. The Krellborn weren't used to fighting improvisation. They weren't ready for Lance. At the launch bay, 2 enemy squads were loading into a heavy transport. One of them spotted him and raised a rifle. Lance fired first. His stolen cannon belched heat and cracked the floor. The enemy scattered. He leapt from a railing, landed hard, and drove the butt of the cannon into the nearest target's head. Alarms screamed. Engines began to power up. He sprinted across the platform, dodging return fire, and reached the ship's control interface. It was locked. Of course. He jammed a spike grenade into the console and screamed back toward the cadets. "You might want to duck." The blast ripped through the panel. Flames burst upward. The engines coughed and died. Lance jumped into the cabin, bleeding and laughing. "Now nobody's leaving." Another alert triggered. A final wave incoming. Drop pods descending fast. The entire station was seconds from becoming target practice. SK Raktha's voice cracked through the comms. "Data en route. We're clear." Lance stared at the ruined ship around him. He could leave. He could run. But he didn't. He patched into the station's last functioning broadcast system. "To whoever's still listening, this is Lance Kincaid, human of Earth. The Crucible wasn't built to train you. It was built to eliminate you. They tested us like rats, filed us like threats, and when we passed too well, they called it treason. They feared what we could become. So now it's our turn." He rewired the broadcast relay, linked it to every outercom array, and sent the Crucible's classified logs across open channels. Then he armed every explosive he had left, stood in the middle of the bay, and waited. The first Krellborn drop pod breached the dome. Lance raised his cannon. "Let's teach him Earth's favorite lesson. When you corner something desperate, it stops running. It starts fighting like it's already dead." And he fired. Smoke poured from the broken ceiling like a signal flare to hell. Lance stood among the wreckage, cannon out of charges, left hand dripping red down to his boot. 4 Krellborn corpses surrounded him. One twitched. He kicked it hard. It stopped. His breath came rough. No backup. No cover. Just him and a station bleeding out around him. Another drop pod slammed through the upper gantry. He grinned. "Still think this was about training." He didn't retreat. Instead, he climbed the wreckage and pulled himself up onto the ledge overlooking the bay. One last weapon left. An old explosive charge strapped to his hips since Earth. He'd called it Plan Z, ugly, unstable, untested. He always said it was. For emergencies requiring a personal goodbye. The Krellborn pushed in from all sides. Their lead warrior shouted in broken standard, "You are out of fight." Lance raised both middle fingers. "Then I guess this is the encore." They opened fire. He dove behind a shattered console, rolling hard and slamming into steel. Glass cracked under his shoulder, but he didn't drop the detonator. The cannon was gone, ribs cracked, hearing shot. Didn't matter. He wired the charge through the command console, rerouted it through Crucible's failing reactor line, then set a trigger delay. SK Raktha's voice cracked through the comms. The feed reached the outer colonies. Uprisings already reported. Half the sector is demanding council trials. Good, Lance said, coughing. Hope they add popcorn. You need extraction. Too late. This place needs a message. You'll die. Not before they remember who lit the fuse. He didn't wait for an answer. The Krellborn were breaching his position, climbing, screeching, tearing through what was left of the hull. Lance activated the external speakers. His voice rang out, rough and tired but steady. "This is Lance Kincaid. Earthborn. Crucible survivor. To the Galactic Council, I was never here to pass your test. I was here to break it. You trained us to die clean. I fight dirty. You labeled Earth a threat? You got that right?" He stood tall, bleeding, shaking, grinning. "And this is what happens when you push a Deathworlder too far." He hit the final switch. The bay erupted. Fire, shrapnel, plasma discharge. The whole section collapsed inward, ripping the Krellborn apart with the station itself. But Lance wasn't in the middle. He'd rigged the outer scaffolding for a fallback just in case. Always have a door, even if it's made of fire. He'd launched himself clear seconds before the detonation, riding a service rail chute that rocketed him into the secondary maintenance shaft. He slammed hard at the bottom, rolled, and blacked out for 3 full minutes. When his eyes opened, there was silence. No alarms. No gunfire. Just distant sirens from failing subsystems. He sat up, checked his leg. Broken. Not useless. He wrapped it with a coolant pipe and pushed himself upright, limping hard. No time to stop. Not yet. The escape hangars had been sealed. He knew that. But the Krellborn's disabled transport was still docked, mostly intact. If he could rewire the controls and bypass the retina lock, he could at least crawl out of orbit and dump the rest of the Crucible's files into DeepNet. He staggered toward it, climbing over corpses and loose plating, every step dragging, every breath tight. One last push. One last shot. A cadet appeared, Sylvan, nervous, young. She aimed a sidearm at him, shaking. "You're human," she said, eyes wide. "No argument there. You're the one who broke the Crucible." He nodded. "You here to stop me?" She hesitated. Then lowered the gun. "No," she said. "I'm here to help you finish it." They entered the ship together. Systems barely functional. Weapons disabled. Navigation shot. But engines flickered when coaxed. Enough for launch. They reached orbit in silence. Below, the Crucible glowed red as failing reactor cores swallowed it from within. A monument to control now breaking apart in its own lies. Lance keyed in the transmission again, this time with full logs, evidence, the broadcasts, everything. "This is no longer a school." His voice echoed across the stars. "It was a weapon dressed as wisdom. A trap built by cowards afraid of progress. Earth refused to kneel. So they tried to erase us. But we don't vanish. We multiply." He hit transmit. The signal jumped to relay towers across Council space. Even shutdown sectors would catch echoes of it. Then he sat back in the pilot chair, coughing blood into his hand. "No," he muttered. "I need a nap the size of a small moon." The Sylvan cadet handed him a drink pack. "Why did you stay behind?" He smiled weakly. "Because if someone didn't punch the bully in the teeth, they'd just keep shoving smaller kids. And I'm really, really good at punching." The ship floated, small against the wreckage behind them. Council patrols would come. but not fast enough to erase what had already been sent. The truth was out. The Crucible was dead. And Earth had spoken. Askeraktha's voice buzzed in again. You're alive? Don't sound so surprised. You just became a myth. Lance chuckled. Figures. I always hated history class. A silence settled. Then a flood of messages poured in. Uprisings. Defections. Ships changing flags. Recruits refusing orders. The council no longer ruled undisputed. A fracture had begun. The Sylvan cadets stared at the console. You started a war. No, Lance said. I answered one. Outside, stars blinked into motion. A new era coming fast. Not clean. Not pretty. But human. And Lance smiled, blood in his teeth, knowing that for the first time in a long time, Earth had the final word.